Hungary's rebirth of nationalism is sending shockwaves through Europe. Bordering 7 countries, its geographic location has made immigration and emigration an integral part of Hungary's history, shaping its social fabric and cultural identity. But a war on multiculturalism is challenging the nation's long-standing embrace of diversity, raising concerns about its future in Hungary and, by extension, across Europe. With a deeply rooted history of foreign domination and external interference, Hungary has developed a strong mistrust of any outside influence, which it sees as encroaching on its national sovereignty. This innate distrust has fueled a backlash against multiculturalism, which many Hungarians perceive as an imposition, rather than an inherent part of their national identity. As Hungary continues to grapple with its identity and navigate the challenges of a changing world, the fate of Europe hangs in the balance. Welcome to Living History. Hungary has been invaded or overrun throughout history. A wide range of cultures, languages, and religions have, at one time or another, fought for a place here. And yet, Hungary's current Prime Minister, Viktor Orbán, believes Hungary cannot cope with immigration, claiming it has no experience of multiculturalism. So if Hungary is founded on varied cultures, how can this be part of the nationalist view? After all, the earliest known ancestral Hungarians are believed to be an ethnic blend of Ugric and Turkish peoples living in western Siberia. For centuries, Magyars migrated across the region, eventually settling in their present location. Hungary then fought empires, oppression, and countless invasions to secure a unified and independent country that still would not come until the early 20th century. Interestingly, despite attempting to impose and reshape Hungarian identity, these conflicts actually served to cement it, and ironically shaped the nationalism that exists today. Just consider this: between the 16th and 17th centuries, Turks brutally conquered and occupied the country, tearing it apart culturally and politically. It was a clash between two of history's most powerful empires, the Ottoman Empire and the Habsburg monarchy, who were both vying for control of Hungary's geographical importance. But it was also a clash of ideologies: Christianity and Islam. In 1526, at the Battle of Mohat, the Ottoman forces, under the leadership of Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, defeated the Hungarian army and seized modern-day Budapest. It would remain under Ottoman control for 150 years. Bitter civil conflicts unfolded against the background of Turks ravaging and balkanizing the country. So in today's politics, monoculturalism in Hungary is about more than just immigration. It is a fight against multiculturalism itself to protect Hungarian unity. As the Ottoman Empire advanced through Europe, the Habsburgs sought to counter the advance, sparking the Great Turkish War, with Hungary at the heart of the conflict. Keep in mind that the Ottoman Empire was a powerful Islamic state, and while the conflict was motivated by territorial and political factors, the empirical desire to impose Islam in the region was undeniable. The result? Today, Hungary has a difficult relationship with Islam. As ISIS emerged from the aftermath of Al-Qaeda in the early 2000s, the threat of terrorism was politically weaponized to refuse refugees from Muslim-majority countries. Orbán framed this as a necessary line of defense for Hungary's national security, as well as protecting Hungary's Christian identity from immigration threats. Orbán also said that while Hungarians have no problems with the local Muslim community, any EU plan to relocate asylum seekers, including many Muslims, would destroy Hungary's Christian identity and culture. But this agenda transcends rhetoric. In 2015, his Fidesz party orchestrated a nationwide campaign, sending questionnaires to every household in Hungary. They posed questions like, do you agree that the mismanagement of the immigration issue by Brussels could lead to an increase in terrorist attacks? The thinly veiled insinuation was clear. Orbán's party was attempting to stoke fear and anxiety among Hungarians, linking immigration to terrorism. International observers warn that this safeguarding approach could lead to Hungary's isolation and exacerbate the growing rift between Eastern and Western Europe on issues of immigration and religious tolerance. And this stance is particularly ironic considering the region's historical embrace of multiculturalism during the Habsburg Empire. Under Habsburg rule, pluralism and diversity were the guiding principles, fostering a harmonious coexistence of various cultures and religions. However, Hungary harbors a unique grievance with the Habsburgs. In 1683, King Jan Sobieski III of Poland led a European coalition to repel the Ottoman siege of Vienna, a pivotal moment in European history. The ensuing Treaty of Karlowitz in 1699 resulted in significant territorial gains for Hungary, liberating many regions from Ottoman control. At the same time, this victory paved the way for increased Habsburg influence over Hungary, eventually leading to the establishment of the Habsburg-controlled Kingdom of Hungary. Now, the Habsburg monarchy was predominantly Austrian and followed a strong German influence. Because of this, they rarely respected the Hungarian constitution, leaving a lasting legacy of resentment among Hungarians towards the Habsburgs, and in turn influencing their current stance on multiculturalism and distrust of interference. Today, Hungary maintains many parallels with European ideologies, such as economic reforms, trade partnerships, and cultural patronage. But it also carries mistrust. After all, much like the Habsburg monarchy, the EU is an authority in its own right, and more importantly, an external one, shaped by Franco-German ideologies. And just as the Habsburgs oppressed Hungarian principles, the EU's manifesto doesn't always align with what Orban's government sees as the best interests of Hungary itself. With a strong influence in the Eastern Bloc, this further serves to divide West and Eastern Europe. But despite struggles against the Habsburgs, the early part of the 19th century saw a magnificent revival of Hungary's national spirit, particularly through a movement undeniably linked with Stephen Széchenyi, a prominent statesman and revered reformer of Hungarian infrastructure, economy, culture, and education. The Revolution of 1848 saw the nationalist Hungarian uprising demand greater autonomy from the Habsburg monarchy, but Russian intervention in 1849 crushed Hungarian forces, quelling the rebellion, something that we will see again in the 20th century, but more on that in a moment. For now, let's fast forward to World War I, where Hungary was defeated. This had a profound and lasting impact on the country. The Treaty of Trianon, which formally ended the war, established a sovereign Hungarian state, but stripped 2/3 of its territory, including vast regions populated by Hungarian-speaking communities, leaving a deep wound in the nation's psyche. This territorial loss, along with widespread economic hardship and social unrest, led to the rise of Hungarian irredentism, a nationalist movement that sought to reclaim the lost territories and played a critical role in the rise of the authoritarian regime of Miklós Horthy, who ruled Hungary from 1920 to 1944. What is unsettling is that a similar rhetoric and grievance still resonates with many Hungarians today, something that Viktor Orbán's populist rhetoric desperately taps into. Then, as World War II engulfed Europe, Hungary was again caught in the crossfire and on the wrong side of history, initially aligning with Nazi Germany and participating in the invasion of the Soviet Union. However, as the tide of war turned against the Axis powers, Hungary attempted to negotiate a peace deal with the Allies. This failed gambit resulted in a German occupation in 1944, further deepening Hungary's sense of betrayal and victimhood. It gets worse. In the aftermath, Hungary's fate was largely determined by the victorious Allies, with little consideration for its own interests or input. Hungary was even excluded from the signing of the Treaty of Paris, which formally ended the war in Europe. This exclusion reinforced the nation's feelings of marginalization and powerlessness at the hands of Western powers. And then, of course, came the Cold War, which solidified Hungary's position within the Soviet-dominated Eastern Bloc, subjecting the nation to decades of oppressive communist rule. This period was marked by political repression, economic stagnation, and the suppression of individual freedoms. In fact, when in 1956, Hungarians rose up against the communist regime in a series of protests, they were met with brutal force by Soviet troops, just like in 1849. Needless to say, this makes Hungary's current relationship with Russia complex and turbulent. On the one hand, Hungary carries the scars of Soviet domination. On the other, it is increasingly willing to overlook the past in order to foster a more beneficial relationship to protect itself from future aggression. There is more to this story, though. The sight of an EU and NATO leader shaking hands with Vladimir Putin has made many Western leaders wince as they unite against Russian hostility. In fact, the US ambassador to Budapest complained that while Russia was striking Ukrainian civilians, Hungary pleads for business deals, but Orbán argues that Ukraine cannot win the war and has opposed EU sanctions on Russian oil and gas, while refusing to allow EU or NATO military aid to enter Ukraine. In fact, the government has gone as far as blocking financial aid for Ukraine. As Hungarian society grappled with the changing dynamics of immigration and diversity following EU accession in 2004, far-right movements like the New Hungarian Guard sprung to life. Since then, Hungarians' persistent disregard for EU integration has significantly undermined the bloc's ability to effectively address immigration challenges. In 2015, Hungary passed legislation that tightened asylum rules and began building a fence along the Serbian border to keep out migrants and refugees. Under the EU burden-sharing scheme, Hungary was supposed to accept over 1,000 refugees at the height of the 2015 refugee crisis. Instead, the Hungarian government spent approximately 28 million euros on an anti-immigrant campaign. But as mentioned earlier, there is more to this story. Orbán's cozying up with Russia, staunch opposition to the EU's liberal values, and his relentless efforts to consolidate power have tarnished Hungary's reputation and eroded its standing on the international stage. His rhetoric, often laced with xenophobia and intolerance, has further alienated Hungary from its European partners, strained the cohesion of the bloc, and is consistently undermining the ability of the European Union to act effectively. In fact, in a recent address, Orbán once again stirred controversy by asserting that the mixing of European and non-European races threatens the very fabric of nations. He declared, "We are not a mixed race, and we do not want to become a mixed race." These divisive remarks, echoing his long-standing anti-immigration stance, underscore his rejection of multiculturalism and his disdain for the EU. However, when it comes to history, perhaps it is worth remembering the words of Hungary's first king, István: "A monocultural and monolingual kingdom is weak and fragile." Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Want to know more about the challenges facing Europe? Check out our next video, which explores Poland's Germany problem, linked here. See you there.